Okay, welcome to our last video for Intermediate Python, our final project, which will last for 2 days. This is going to be an extremely short video. It's just going to be talking about the dynamics of the project and what the actual project idea is, and then the rest is up to you. So for our Intermediate Python final project, we decided to make a restaurant class. So it is your job to create a restaurant class. But it's not just a restaurant. There's actually 3 separate classes that would go into this entire restaurant schematic. So we have a restaurant class, a recipe class, and a customer class. We have to build these 3 classes in a way that they work with each other to create a good customer experience or a takeout experience. So you have to make sure you implement these classes so they can interact with each other's properties and functions. So your imagination is technically the limit here. You can include inheritance, as we've learned. If you know polymorphism, we haven't gone through that in our course, but if you want, you can include that. Just practice your skills with object-oriented programming within this project. So this is all up to you. We just give a set of requirements that you have to complete, and then the rest is up to you. You can create your own kind of takeout experience for the customer. So let's talk about the recipe class first. So we have these 3 classes. Let's talk about the recipe one first. So a recipe class, the bare minimum, it will simply contain a list of ingredients. So these ingredients, it will also contain the prices of each ingredient, which will be in a dictionary in the class. So we've talked about dictionaries in Intro to Python. There are basic data types in Python. So you can map each ingredient to a price in the recipe class. Each recipe must have a method called calculatePrice, which calculates the total price of the food based on the ingredients. So this can be done using the simple for loop. And then you can add whatever you want. So we said before that this is all up to you. So this is just the minimum. So a list containing the ingredients and a dictionary containing the prices. Yes, you could have the prices in the list as well, but we want to utilize different data types, so we want you to use a dictionary in this case. So remember those key value pairs. Now let's talk about a restaurant class. Our restaurant class will keep track of the balance of all our recipes, as well as the stock of ingredients and their prices. So we talked about the ingredients in the recipes as well, but this will have its own stock of ingredients, which means if a restaurant has X amount of Y ingredients, it will have that stored in some type of array or a list. So we have that, we have a stock of ingredients, and then we also have their prices that correspond to that price of the ingredient. So if we have, let's say, carrots and they cost $10, we have, let's say, 10 carrots. In total, they cost $10. So that would just be an example of an ingredient and their price. So once again, dictionaries are best in this case. We must also have a refill stock method, which will buy extra ingredients. So we have our balance, right, which is a certain amount of money or budget the restaurant has, and it'll deduct that balance, or it'll deduct from the balance whatever you need to include more ingredients. So let's say a recipe comes in that's requiring 10 carrots, but you only have 5 carrots. You would have to buy the 5 carrots and deduct that amount from the balance. So you can use this using the different attributes of the different classes, which is one way how these classes interact with each other. And also we obviously want to call this refill stock whenever there's an insufficient stock present of an ingredient. So if you're iterating through the ingredient and you find that we don't have, the restaurant doesn't have enough ingredients of that, or it doesn't have enough stock of that ingredient, then you would have to call the refill stock method and buy it, essentially. The restaurant will also have a getPrice method, which will calculate the price of the recipe times at a rate of profit 1.5. So this rate can be up to you, but it says we will calculate the price of the recipe. So you would iterate through the entire recipe, and basically get all the prices of the ingredients and sum it up. So if you look back at our recipe class, you have the prices of each ingredient will be in a dictionary. You could have a total price attribute in this recipe class itself, which will make it easier for the restaurant class, but this is up to you again. The dynamics of everything and how they will interact is up to you, but we just provide the guidelines and the orders. So here you have a method that calculates the price of a recipe based on the ingredients. You could just include that in the recipe class and then that would also work. Then finally we have a make order method, which will update the stock and balance based on a recipe parameter. So what does that mean? So we should deduct from the stock whatever stock we have in our restaurant class, which will most likely be a list, and should update the balance with the proper price. So if we have a recipe, we want to add this time, because if we have a balance and we get a recipe in, they're paying us, right? They're paying the restaurant. So we want to add the money, and maybe we can have a rate of profit. So we want to multiply the price of each recipe by 1.5, obviously, because we don't want to spend $10 on a food or on a meal and then receive $10 because we make no profit. So you could multiply that by a certain profit rate, but that's up to you. And so we should deduct the stock, obviously, because the recipe, we are utilizing our materials for the recipe, our ingredients. So we deduct the stock and we should add to the balance the price of the recipe. And then you can add any other, once again, any other functionality you would like. So you can kind of see how the interactions are coming along with these three different classes. And finally, we have our customer class. This is our final third class. You could include more, once again, but this is the final class called customer. This customer class will have a placed order method, which will take a restaurant and a recipe and place an order. So you might say, why am I not calling this from the restaurant? But that's because customers can go to many different restaurants, right? So if you make multiple different restaurant objects, you want to be able to use the same customer and go to different restaurants. And you want it all to work fluidly and smoothly, and just be a seamless experience for the customer, right? So if the customer goes to Taco Bell versus McDonald's, they should be able to do that. And they also take the recipe. So as you might remember, if they put a recipe in and they don't have the stock of the restaurant does not have the stock, it would have to call its refill stock method. And obviously you can use the input to interact with an actual user. In this case, it will probably be you who's programming it, but you would use the input method that just takes input from standard input. And as an optional data type or attribute, an optional attribute, you can have the balance for the customer. So obviously customers don't have infinite money, at least I hope so. So you would have a balance for the customer, which limits how much he can spend. So if he spends more, then they won't be able to pay for that meal, and then he would have to do something else, like maybe work, you can implement that, or he just doesn't get that meal. So implement those, and those are the three classes. You can see how they interact with each other. The restaurant takes in the recipes, the customer takes in the restaurant and the recipes in one of their methods, one or more of their methods, and they all kind of work together to create this takeout experience, and that's what we're going for. Remember, this is 2 days. You will have the first and second day to completely work on this project, because this is really practicing your object-oriented programming skills, and if you can get this down, that means you would have learned a lot in our course. So that's it for now. If you have any questions, we did include this menu thing, menu class, which is just an extra class if you would like. This is all optional. The basic required three are the customer, restaurant, and recipe, but you could include just many other classes. They could have the menu, the type of restaurant, and so on. So you could have many different other classes, many different attributes, and so on, and they're just basically up to you. Your imagination is the limit. But that's it for now. This project will once again take 2 days, and just try your best. Good luck.